Hello and welcome to University Television Presents. My name is Ashley Cox and today I'm here with the professor and chair from the Anthropology Department, Dr. Ziker. How are you doing?
Hi, Ashley. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks for having me today.
So can you tell us what anthropology is?
Sure. Anthropology really is the study of humans, and in our department we look at humans both cross-culturally and through time.
Very cool. What distinguishes anthropology from any other social science?
Anthropology really is distinguished by a number of things. First of all, it's this cross-cultural approach. So we intentively go around the world and look at different societies and how they relate to their environment, how they relate to each other and to their surrounding peoples and conditions. So cross-cultural. Another thing is a holistic approach. So we look not only at their economy or their politics or their religion, but the whole kind of picture of the society. Another thing is evolutionary ecology. So we look at human behavior in terms of both the diversity of what you see, but also the universals. We're all humans. And so there are certain things that you find across every society. So we're really interested in what are the conditions of evolution that brought about those things that are the same about humans. But we're also interested in the diversity. So we are interested in how the different ecological relationships that people live in, how they bring about, how they combine with the universals to bring about the diversity. And then I'd say a final thing that differentiates anthropology is, from many social sciences, is cultural relativism. And so we really look at the goal of cultural relativism is to look at each society in its own terms as opposed to looking at it in our terms, the Western ideology, I'd say. So looking at traditions and behaviors in different societies from the perspective of those societies and trying to get away from our own ethnocentrism. So oftentimes anthropologists go through what's called culture shock. They go to some society where they have behaviors that seem kind of odd from their own upbringing. Well, there's a natural reaction to those things, which we call ethnocentrism. That's somehow not as valuable. So we really have to identify our own ethnocentrism in order to achieve cultural relativism. That being said, cultural relativism has its limits, and there are certain behaviors that we find in societies that are recognized as being harmful both for the health and the well-being of those people. And so a lot of anthropologists are involved in trying to deal with those problems from a development perspective.
So what is the research like within anthropology, and what do you research specifically?
Okay. So within anthropology, we have 5 faculty members, and so 2 of the faculty members are archaeologists, and one of them works in this area, in the Snake River Plain, looking at prehistoric life and livelihoods and settlement patterns and use of tools and use of resources. Another of our faculty members works in Central California in the San Francisco Bay Area, looking at particularly ground stone. So they used big stones to grind acorns and other vegetable matter. And so she's looking at the time it takes to make ground stone, as well as the use of ground stone for non-economic purposes. So sometimes these ground stones were highly decorated with pigments and decorations and then put in the graves of people. So looking at what it takes to produce those and what they were used for. We have a physical anthropologist who studies growth and development of Native Americans in the Midwest. And she does that through looking at teeth and the microstructures of teeth. And then we have 3 cultural anthropologists. So I am one of the cultural anthropologists. I work with indigenous hunter-gatherers in northern Siberia, and I look at what the resources they use are, how they get those resources, mainly caribou and fish, how they distribute those resources around the community, what their spiritual relationship is with those resources, as well as their demographics and the relationship with the Russian government and land claims, etc. Another cultural anthropologist works in southern India with a scheduled tribe of honey collectors, and she's looking at what economic functions honey takes in that society, as well as the group composition and the basically how it is that they go out and get honey, and how the knowledge to get the honey is transmitted across the generation. And then we have another anthropologist who works in Indonesia with a group that hunts whales and other sea mammals. So
Wow.
yeah, we have a pretty wide,
Very broad spectrum.
broad, yeah.
So with your research specifically, what are you, I know you mentioned a bunch of things that you're
Yeah.
like look into. What are you doing right now specifically within that?
Right now, I'm looking at food sharing. And
Okay.
Food sharing among hunter-gatherers is really important for both the hunter-gatherers themselves and theoretically. So it's been noted by anthropologists that hunter-gatherers around the world ubiquitously share food within their communities. And so I should probably take a step back and say hunter-gatherer, being a hunter-gatherer is a kind of economic adaptation that all of our ancestors lived under before the development of agriculture. So all of our ancestors were hunter-gatherers before 10,000 years ago. So studying hunter-gatherers today is really important for understanding what our ancestors did, how they survived, and what led to the developments that we see with non-hunter-gatherers today.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at the sharing of meat and fish in northern Siberia, and what are the different sharing patterns that we see. So mainly I see sharing to households that are related through kinship, but I also see some reciprocal exchanges between households that aren't related, and we also see sharing to households that is not reciprocal. So we would call that public goods in social sciences. And so the hunting economy in northern Siberia, where I work, supports both what we call risk buffering. So it's kind of like a social security system, but it's also kind of a charity and providing goods for the whole community. So that's I'm analyzing some data on food distributions that I collected in 2001 and 2003.
Very nice. That's a lot. That's very interesting though.
Thanks.
In April, you had an event called, I believe it's the NWEAV?
NWEAV, yeah.
NWEAV, there we go.
Uh-huh.
It's like lots of
You
letters.
could call it NWEAV.
NWEAV, NWEAV. Can you please explain more about this event that happened and the participants that were there?
Sure. So this event, which occurred in April, is the Northwest Evolution, Ecology, and Human Behavior Symposium. That's what NWEAV stands for. So what we did with that was invite prominent scholars from the region, mainly from University of Utah, University of Wyoming, University of Washington, Washington State University. We invited some others, but those were the main participants last year. And so this event was basically, our clubs were very involved in organizing this, along with the department, to try and bring the anthropologists from other schools and their graduate students to Boise State, so that we could have kind of an informal, it's not a professional conference, we had more time, we could meet these people and talk to them, whereas at a conference it's really hard to talk to someone that's a very well-known anthropologist, because all of their friends are going to be meeting and talking with them at that time. So an opportunity for our students to get to know faculty and graduate students at other universities in the region, but also an opportunity for students at those other universities to get to know Boise State as a possible destination for graduate school as well. So that's we're going to do it again this year in March.
Very cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned the clubs on campus get involved with that. So there is an anthropology club.
Yes.
What do they do around campus to?
Okay. So the Anthropology Club actually is the oldest academic club at BSU. It's like 30 years old. We also have another club. It's called the Archaeology Students Association. And so both of those clubs, they do stuff together like NWEAB, but they do other things. So sometimes they go to schools and give presentations. Sometimes they go to conferences. A lot of what they do is go to other conferences. We've had things like dinners with other clubs, such as the German Club, and those kind of things. Yeah, they do volunteer work as well.
Very cool. So they're active,
Yes.
which is good. Can you elaborate on the huge, or on the Grand Canyon Country Crossroad Transportation Museum?
Oh, yeah.
What's
Okay.
going on?
So the Crossroads Transportation Museum is being completed at Celebration Park, which is Idaho's only archaeological park that is located just south of Melba, right on the Snake River. It's really an incredibly beautiful location, and thousands of school children go there every year to learn about the archaeology of the Snake River Plain.
Oh, wow.
And previously, they've had all of the classrooms as outdoor classrooms. And there's a really neat thing down there. There's a self-guided petroglyph tour. So you can walk along the river and see where the ancient Native Americans, drew pictures on these giant volcanic boulders. So there are archaeological sites there, but there's also this park, and there's camping there right on the river. And then now they're completing this museum, which is going to have classrooms indoors so that students can come year-round, as well as a dormitory and a professional kitchen so that we can use this as a field station.
Very cool.
To do, to have students out there doing projects and other kinds of research experiences.
It's pretty close, which is nice as well.
Yeah.
It's a little drive, but
It's
not
really
too far.
unique. It's really unique. There's nothing like that anywhere else.
That's awesome. Do you think because of this museum, anthropology will be a little more popular in our area, just because of the knowledge that will be shared?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
Besides the museum, how do you think the public will get information or more knowledge about anthropology in general?
A lot of information about anthropology kind of comes through internet news services like Yahoo or CNN. Occasionally I'll see something on one of those that's reporting on a scientific article. So one of the ones that, a story that came out recently on CNN, but it was also in other news obviously, was the discovery of these ancient hominids in Dmanisi, Georgia.
Wow.
Which is in the Republic of Georgia. And these finds go back to 2 million years. So this is really very interesting because it was thought that humans kind of came out of Africa, that most of our evolution was in Africa. But now we're finding these ancient humans living in Eurasia. And so this is kind of changing the picture of what human evolution is looking like.
Wow. That's very interesting. I would have never guessed.
But obviously students would want to go to the library and look up the original sources.
Yes. So going off students, actually, why do you think it's important for students specifically to learn about anthropology?
I think it's important because as college students and citizens of the United States, we really want to kind of see what's out there beyond our own country. And you can do this through a foreign language. You can do it through anthropology. But I think it's really important to open some other doors and to look comparatively across cultures. This is not the only social constellation that ever existed. And there are other social constellations, there are other ways of doing things, and there's a lot of information that we can learn from other societies. So that's one important reason why anthropology is important.
So you are a part, obviously, faculty, professor. So in your department, do you offer any scholarships or internships specific to anthropology majors?
Yes, we do. We have internships with the coroner's office, and we have internships with the Forest Service and other agencies that do archaeological kinds of investigations. Sometimes we have students do internships with faculty that are sort of based on their research. And sometimes students come to us with an internship idea, and then we'll help administer that internship. So I had a student doing an internship at the Boise Art Museum this last year on their material culture exhibit.
Oh, wow. So
yeah, we're really open to internships. We do have some field experiences too. So we have a field school that happens every summer. Dr. Plu runs that, and we take a small number of students out to the field where they work on an excavation for 6 weeks. So they camp for 6 weeks, working on an archaeological site in the region. And then we encourage students to do field schools in other areas. So we had some students go to Italy and Macedonia doing field schools last year.
Oh, wow.
So
lots of opportunities,
yeah.
lots of travel. What does the future hold for the anthropology department here at Boise State?
Well, we're really trying to build our research profile, and we have some new hires. I mentioned a few of them already, and so these individuals are really good researchers. They have a good track record on getting externally funded projects going, and so that's going to open some opportunities for students, both undergraduates and graduates, to do research with faculty. So that's really the direction we're going, is to build up our research, our upper division classes, our research opportunities for undergraduates, as well as our graduate program. We have two graduate programs that we support. So we want our graduate students to have plenty of research opportunities.
Yeah.
Looks like you got a new question.
I got a new question. What's your most memorable moment of teaching anthropology?
Most memorable moment of teaching anthropology. That's a good one. You know, actually, my first class that I taught at Boise State is really a memorable one. There were 2 students in that class that were top 10 scholars that year.
Oh, wow.
And there was just a lot of questions, a lot of just really engaged students, and so that was a really memorable class.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what classes do you teach on campus?
I teach a lot of different ones. I teach introductory classes in anthropology. I teach upper division. I teach my main courses are kinship and social organization, and environmental anthropology, and medical anthropology. Then some graduate courses also.
Very nice. So out of the courses that you teach, which ones are kind of your favorite to teach, you get most excited about?
One I really like to teach is magic, witchcraft, and religion. That one I can really get excited about. And the students usually are pretty excited about it too.
What's so interesting about that? Like,
well, you know, the question of religion is really, and beliefs is really one that a lot of people can connect to. And so anthropologists have been asking this question of, you know, why people believe strange things. And so we really attack that critically in this course, and trying to focus not so much on figuring out what beliefs are, but really looking at it in terms of communication. And you probably like that because you're in the communication department.
Yeah.
And so what is the function really of these types of communications, looking across cultures? And so that it's a new way of looking at religious behavior, but it can kind of encompass the apparently strange kinds of things that people do, like witchcraft accusations and divination and totemism and different kinds of religious practices. Yeah.
With your graduate courses, about how many students do you have in those courses?
We usually have about 5 to 6 students in our graduate courses.
It's a good group.
Yeah.
From those graduate students, where do you see like most of them end up doing as a job when they're actually done with their grad school?
Well, some of them go on for their PhD.
Okay.
So we have these master's programs, and one of the master's programs, the Masters of Arts, is really preparing people to go on for their PhD. And we've had a couple of people do that. Otherwise, we have master's students that are teaching around the state. So one of our students actually is the chair of the anthropology program at CWI.
Oh, wow.
We've got other students who teach in high school. We've got students in the other program, the applied anthropology degree. They're mainly working in environmental consulting companies, and other agencies where they do work with regard to archaeological compliance. So there is a set of federal legislation that requires it requires people to do archaeological investigations of areas, especially when they're being developed on public land. So at the exact name of it, but there's a shooting range just south of the airport.
Okay.
That's that's controlled by the Army, and so a lot of students do work down there with the archaeologist, Jake Frulinger, who actually is an adjunct in our department,
Oh, nice.
doing archaeological surveys, because in the shooting range, there's a lot of potential disturbances of the archaeological sites. So the Forest Service, other areas like that, are required to do documentation of archaeological and historic sites. So a lot of our students, especially if they focus on archaeology, will go into that kind of work. Environmental consulting really is what it's called.
In the introductory class that you teach, what are the things that you go over in a semester, the topics?
Well, there's sort of the obligatory introduction to anthropological theory, and then really what I try to focus on is sort of presenting to the students some information from different societies. So I have a book that I wrote called Peoples of the Tundra, and I have the students read that book because it really introduces the students to the group of people I worked with in Siberia. We also use some other books that are like that, ethnographic monographs. So we look at these ethnographic monographs and really try to use it to get to know those people in these different areas. So usually I'll use one about a people in the Amazon, a group of people in the Amazon, and one in Africa. I think next semester I'm going to be using one that's about the Apache in Arizona, and another one that's about a group of people in the Philippines.
Oh, wow. Yeah. What got you interested in anthropology to begin with?
Okay, great question. So when I was an undergraduate, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I took a bunch of different courses, different types of courses. And I took an anthropology class just because I'd heard about it once. And so I took the class, and I remember when I was with a group of people studying for an exam, there was another group of people right next to us, and they heard that we were studying for this other exam, and one of them said, "You've got to take a course from Professor Stedman. He's really crazy, you'll love him." And so I took a course from Professor Stedman, and I took every other course that he ever offered.
Oh, wow.
Really enthusiastic, really charismatic guy, and he really convinced me that's, not that he convinced me, but after taking all these courses, I really wanted to become an anthropologist, or an anthropology major. At the same time, I also took Russian language all throughout my undergraduate. And so when I graduated, I essentially had a double major. Didn't quite finish the Russian double major, but I'd spent a semester in Russia.
Wow.
And so I could speak Russian really well after that. So I graduated Arizona State, and I decided to move to Washington, D.C. and see what I could do, if I could get a job in anthropology or something related to my Russian. As it happened, I got a job relating to something, utilizing my Russian skills. And it was a technology transfer company. And so I was working with businesses, I was working with scientists in the former Soviet Union, and kind of doing a lot of traveling, going to Russia a lot, going around the United States a lot, and doing deals.
Wow.
And so I did that for a couple years, and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. It's a pretty good job for right out of college, and I'm having some fun, but I wasn't getting the intellectual stimulation, and I kept thinking about anthropology. So my second year of that job, I started applying for graduate schools, and then I went into graduate school.
And here you are.
And here I am, yep.
So where are your offices in the department located on campus?
Okay, so our main office is in the Hemingway building, which is right next to the communication building.
Yes.
And sort of in between the library and the sub. And we have 4 faculty offices and our archaeology lab in the Hemingway building. And we also have 3 new rooms in the new mathematics building, or the remodeled mathematics building. We have 2 labs and a graduate student space and 2 faculty offices over there.
Very nice. So what are those labs actually used for?
Yeah, the anthropology teaching lab over in the mathematics building has our physical anthropology collections, and that's also where we're teaching our statistics and field methods classes. Then there's our anthropology research lab that we use to do processing of samples. So sometimes we'll need to take a sample of something like a bone or a tooth and embed it in a matrix, and then take a cross section of it so that you can study the microstructures of that tooth or bone. But doing that requires the use of toxic chemicals. So we have fume hoods and all the equipment needed to do that.
All the necessary stuff.
Yeah. The archaeology lab over here in Hemingway, that is mainly used to look at archaeological collections, and so there's cataloging there, and then kind of use of microscopes and things like that.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Ziker, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thanks so much for tuning in to UTP Presents. I'm Ashley Cox, and we'll see you next time.